My name is Lena Thompson, and for a long time I thought I had the perfect life, but looking back now, I realize that I was just a professional builder who forgot to check the foundation of her own home. At 38 years old, I had spent over a decade establishing myself as one of the top structural engineers in the United Kingdom. My specialty was high-stakes infrastructure, which meant I spent a lot of time in places most people only see on the news. I lived for the challenge of making things stand tall against the elements, but I never expected the man I loved to be the one who would knock me down. My husband, Mark, was a charming man who always seemed to be on the verge of his next big business success. We met in London when I was 25 and he was 27. He had a way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room, and for a long time that was enough. I was the primary breadwinner, which never bothered me because I believed we were a team. I worked the long hours and took the dangerous assignments so that we could build a future together. 3 years ago, I accepted a massive contract to oversee a complex bridge project in a remote part of the Middle East. The pay was astronomical, and the prestige was even higher. Mark and I talked about it for weeks. He told me it was a sacrifice for our family, and that he would stay behind in our beautiful London flat to manage our investments and keep everything running smoothly. I trusted him with everything. I gave him full power of attorney because it was easier for him to sign documents while I was thousands of miles away in a desert with spotty internet. For 2 years, I worked in 50-degree heat, wearing heavy boots and a hard hat while dreaming of the day I would return home to my husband. We spoke every day at first, and then every week, and then the messages started getting shorter. I blamed it on the time difference and my grueling schedule. I was tired and lonely, but I told myself it was worth it. Then came the Tuesday that changed everything. I had just finished a 12-hour shift inspecting reinforced concrete pillars under a blistering sun. I walked back to my shipping container office and opened my laptop to see an email from Mark. The subject line simply said regarding our marriage. My heart dropped into my stomach before I even clicked it. The email was short and cold. Mark told me that he had realized, while I was away, that he did not love me anymore, and that he had found someone who actually prioritized him. He said he had already filed for divorce and that there was no point in me trying to call him because he had changed his number. He ended the email by telling me not to come back to the flat because he had changed the locks and sold my half of the furniture. I sat there in the silence of the desert feeling like the world had stopped spinning. I tried to call him, but the call went straight to a dead line. I tried to log into our joint savings account to book a flight home, but my password did not work. I called the bank, and after an hour of being on hold, I found out the truth. Mark had used the power of attorney to drain every single penny from our joint accounts. He had also taken out a second mortgage on our London flat and emptied that too. Over £400,000 of my hard-earned money was gone. I was stuck in a foreign country with nothing but the clothes on my back and the small amount of cash in my local wallet. I felt a level of betrayal that I cannot even put into words. It was not just the money, but the fact that he had waited until I was at my most vulnerable to strike. I spent the next 48 hours in a blur of tears and rage. I reached out to my sister back in London, and she told me the worst part. Mark was not just living in our flat with some random woman. He was living there with Sarah, who had been my best friend since university. Sarah had been the maid of honor at our wedding, and she had been the one I cried to on the phone when I was feeling homesick. They had been seeing each other for over 18 months while I was sending money home to pay for a life they were enjoying together. They were posting photos on social media of themselves at expensive restaurants and on luxury vacations that my labor had funded. I realized then that I could not just sit there and cry. I was an engineer. I knew how to analyze a problem and find the weakest point. I knew how to dismantle a structure piece by piece. Mark and Sarah thought they had one because they had the money and the flat, but they forgot one thing. I was the one who built that life, and I was the one who knew exactly where the cracks were. I spent the final month of my contract in the desert living on the bare minimum and saving every cent of my final paycheck. I did not call Mark, and I did not reply to his email. I wanted him to think I was broken and defeated. I spent my nights researching every law and every loophole I could find. I also did some deep digging into Mark's new business venture. He had used my money to start what he called an elite lifestyle consultancy, which was really just a fancy way of saying he was trying to act like a millionaire to attract other rich people into bad investments. He was a con man, and he was using my reputation to open doors. While I was still overseas, I contacted a private investigator in London named Arthur. I told Arthur everything and gave him access to the digital files I had stored on my personal cloud. Arthur found out that Mark was not just being unfaithful and thieving, but he was also being incredibly sloppy. He was playing a dangerous game with high-interest loans and was using the flat as collateral for a business that had no actual clients. My first step back in London was not to go to the flat. I stayed in a cheap hotel under a different name. I looked different than I did a year ago. I was thinner, and my skin was darkened by the sun, and I looked tired. I started my counterattack by contacting the bank that held our second mortgage. Since Mark had used a power of attorney that I had technically never revoked, they had allowed him to take the money, but I found a tiny technicality in the paperwork. Mark had forged my signature on a specific secondary disclosure form that was required for the loan to be finalized. I did not tell the bank yet. I saved that for later. Instead, I went to the office of the chief executive officer of the investment firm Mark was trying to partner with. I knew the man because I had done the structural survey for his company's new headquarters. I sat in his office and showed him the bank statements. I showed him how Mark was using stolen funds to pretend his consultancy was profitable. I told him that I was about to file a massive lawsuit and that anyone associated with Mark would be dragged into the public eye. The investment firm pulled out of the deal that very afternoon. That was the first pillar to fall. Mark had been counting on that deal to pay off the interest on his loans. Without it, he was suddenly underwater. I then turned my attention to Sarah. Sarah worked as a high-end interior designer, and her reputation was everything to her. I discovered that she had been using Mark's stolen money to buy expensive materials for her clients and then billing them double while pocketing the difference. I didn't go to the police yet. I went to her biggest client, a woman who was known for being a shark in the fashion world. When I showed her the receipts and the original invoices, Sarah's career was over in a matter of hours. Every single one of her clients dropped her, and she was blacklisted from every major design firm in the city. Now they were both feeling the pressure. They were stuck in my flat with no income and mounting debt. But I wasn't done. I wanted them to feel the same sense of displacement and fear that I felt in that shipping container in the desert. I waited until a Friday evening when I knew they would be getting ready for a night out. I showed up at the flat with two large men from a private security firm and a legal representative. Mark opened the door wearing a silk robe I had bought him for his birthday. The look on his face when he saw me was a mixture of horror and arrogance. He tried to tell me to leave and that the flat was his, but I handed him the paperwork. I had filed an emergency injunction. Because of the forged signature on the mortgage documents, the bank had frozen the account, and the court had granted me temporary sole possession of the property pending a full investigation into the fraud. Mark started screaming that I couldn't do this, but the security guard stepped forward, and he went quiet. I watched as Sarah came out of the bedroom wrapped in a towel looking confused. I gave them exactly 30 minutes to pack their bags. I told them they could only take what they had personally bought with their own money before I left for the Middle East. Since Mark hadn't had a real job in years, and Sarah had spent all her money on designer handbags that I now claimed were bought with my stolen funds, they had almost nothing. I stood in the middle of the living room and watched as they stuffed their clothes into trash bags. Sarah was crying and begging me to be reasonable, but I just looked at her and asked if she was being reasonable when she was sleeping in my bed while I was working in a desert. They were kicked out onto the street in the rain with nothing but their trash bags. But the real masterstroke was still to come. I knew Mark had a hidden offshore account because I had found a scrap of paper with a login code months ago. He thought he had a safety net of £50,000 tucked away in the Cayman Islands. While he was busy trying to find a place to sleep that night, I used the power of attorney, which he had never bothered to ask me to revoke, to log into that account. I found the money, and I transferred every single cent of it to a charity that provides clean water to the region where I had been working. I left exactly £1 in the account so he would know someone had been there. The next morning, I went to the police with all the evidence of the forged signatures and the financial fraud. Mark was arrested 2 days later. Because he had no money for a good lawyer, and because I had provided a mountain of evidence, he was eventually sentenced to 3 years in prison for white-collar fraud and grand theft. Sarah was sued by her former clients and ended up filing for bankruptcy. She moved back in with her parents in a small village and is currently working at a grocery store to pay off her legal debts. As for me, I moved back into my flat and I sold every single piece of furniture that they had touched. I used the money I recovered through the court system to renovate the entire place. It no longer looks like the home I shared with a ghost. It looks like a fortress. I am still 38, but I feel like I have lived 100 years. I still work as a structural engineer, but I don't take overseas assignments anymore. I stay in London, where I can keep an eye on my own foundations. Sometimes people ask me if I feel bad for what I did to them, and I just tell them the same thing I tell my junior engineers. If you build something on a lie, you should not be surprised when it collapses. I am now the most successful I have ever been, and I do it all for myself. I recently found out that Mark tried to write me a letter from prison asking for forgiveness and saying he still loves me. I didn't even open it. I put it straight into the paper shredder and watched as his words turned into dust, just like the life he tried to steal from me. I learned that the best revenge is not just taking back what you lost, but building something so much better that the people who hurt you become nothing more than a footnote in your story. My life is solid now, and there is not a single crack in the walls I have built around my heart and my future. The flat is quiet and peaceful, and every morning when I wake up and see the London skyline, I remember that I am the one who designed this life, and no one will ever take it from me again. I spent months meticulously going through every single credit card statement from the time I was away. I found out that Mark had used my frequent flyer miles to take Sarah to the Maldives for a week-long luxury vacation while I was working on a bridge collapse site in the middle of a sandstorm. He had used our shared rewards points to buy her a diamond necklace for her birthday, which he had the audacity to charge to our joint credit card under the category of home repairs. Every discovery was a new stab in the back, but it also gave me more fuel for my fire. I made sure to document every single unauthorized purchase, and I presented it to the divorce court as evidence of dissipation of marital assets. The judge was a stern woman who did not take kindly to men who stole from their working wives. She ordered that Mark's share of the flat be forfeited to me as restitution for the money he had squandered. It felt like a victory, but it was more than that. It was justice. I remember the day the final decree came through. I sat in my newly renovated kitchen drinking a glass of expensive wine that I had bought for myself with my own money, and I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in years. I had replaced the locks, the windows, and even the floorboards. I wanted every trace of him gone. I even hired a professional cleaning crew to scrub the walls with sage and industrial-strength cleaners. My sister came over that night, and we toasted to my new life. She told me that Sarah had been trying to reach out to our old friend group to explain her side of the story, but no one would talk to her. They had all seen the evidence of what she and Mark had done, and they were disgusted. In a city as big as London, you would think it would be easy to hide, but the social circles are smaller than you think. They were pariahs, and they deserved it. I also made sure that the story of Mark's fraudulent business practices was published in a local business journal. I wanted to make sure that no other woman would ever be fooled by his charm and his fake success. I wanted his name to be synonymous with failure. A few months later, I was walking through Covent Garden when I saw a woman who looked like Sarah. She was wearing an old coat and looking at the window of a designer shop with a look of pure longing. I didn't stop to talk to her, and I didn't feel a surge of anger. I just felt nothing. She was a stranger to me, now a ghost from a past life that I had outgrown. I continued my walk, heading toward a meeting for a new skyscraper project I was leading. The wind was cold, but I didn't mind. I knew how to stand strong in the wind. I have since started a scholarship for young women who want to enter the field of structural engineering. I want to help them build their own lives so that they never have to depend on someone else for their security. I tell them that the most important thing you can ever build is your own independence. Every year on the anniversary of the day, I received that email. I take a day off and go to the spa. I treat myself to the best treatments, and I remind myself that I am worth it. I am no longer the woman who was stuck in the desert, crying over a man who didn't deserve her. I am Lena Thompson, and I am the architect of my own destiny. The legal battles took a long time, and there were moments when I thought the stress would break me. There was one hearing where Mark's lawyer tried to argue that I had abandoned the marriage by taking the job overseas. He tried to claim that Mark was suffering from loneliness and that his actions were a result of emotional distress. I stood up in that courtroom and I looked Mark right in the eye. I told the judge that a man who is lonely goes to therapy or talks to his wife, but a man who is a thief goes to the bank and steals her future. The judge agreed with me. Mark's lawyer tried to bring up my long work hours and my dedication to my career as if being a successful woman was a crime. They tried to paint me as cold and calculating, but the truth was that I was just a woman who did her job and expected her husband to do his. When the final judgment was read, and the judge ordered Mark to pay back every penny plus interest, I saw him slump in his chair. He knew it was over. He had no more cards to play and no more lies to tell. The realization that he would be spending the next several years in a prison cell seemed to finally hit him. He looked at me as he was being led away in handcuffs, and for a second I saw a flicker of the man I used to love. But then I remembered the email and the empty bank accounts, and the way he had laughed with Sarah in our home, and that flicker vanished. I walked out of the courthouse and into the sunshine feeling lighter than I had in years. I went to the nearest park and sat on a bench watching people go by. I felt like I was seeing the world in color for the first time in a long time. I realized that the pain he caused me was just a temporary structural failure and that I had the tools to fix it. I have since become a mentor to other women in my firm, and I always tell them to keep their own bank accounts and to never give up their power of attorney to anyone no matter how much they think they trust them. Trust is something that is earned every day, and it can be lost in an instant. I am now looking at buying a second property in the countryside, a small cottage, where I can go to escape the noise of the city. I want a place that is all mine where I can plant a garden and watch things grow. I have a new group of friends, now people who value integrity and hard work. We go out to dinner, and we talk about our dreams and our goals, and I never have to worry about whether someone is lying to me. It is a simple life in many ways, but it is a good one. I have also started traveling for pleasure instead of just for work. I recently went to Italy and spent 2 weeks exploring the ancient architecture of Rome. I stood in the Colosseum and marveled at how it has stood for thousands of years despite the wars and the weather and the passage of time. It reminded me of myself. I have been through the fire, and I have come out stronger on the other side. I am not a victim, I am a survivor, and I am a builder. My story is not one of tragedy, but one of triumph. I took the ruins of my life and I built a palace. And the best part is that I did it all on my own. I don't need a man to tell me I'm successful or to provide for me. I provide for myself, and I am proud of that. Sometimes when I am working on a particularly difficult project, I think back to that desert in the Middle East. I remember the heat and the dust and the feeling of being completely alone. And then I think about where I am now in my beautiful London flat with my successful career and my true friends. I realize that the desert was just a testing ground. It was the place where I found out what I was really made of. It was the place where I learned that I am unbreakable. Mark and Sarah are just distant memories now, like characters in a bad movie I saw a long time ago. They have no power over me, and they never will again. I have moved on, and I have moved up. My future is bright, and it is built on a foundation of truth and hard work, and that is something that can never be knocked down. I have even started dating again, although I am very careful now. I met a man named David who is a landscape architect. He understands the importance of a good foundation, and he respects my independence. We take things slow, and we talk about everything. It is a different kind of relationship than the one I had with Mark. It is built on mutual respect and shared values. We recently worked together on a community garden project, and it was wonderful to see how our different skills could create something beautiful together. But even with David, I keep my finances separate. He respects that because he knows my history, and he knows that my independence is non-negotiable. I have also become more involved in my community. I volunteer with a local charity that helps people who have been victims of financial abuse. I share my story with them, and I give them advice on how to protect themselves and how to fight back. It feels good to use my experience to help others. It turns something negative into something positive. I have learned that revenge is not just about getting even, but about moving forward and living your best life. The fact that I am happy and successful is the ultimate revenge against the people who tried to destroy me. They wanted me to be broken and poor and alone, but instead I am thriving and wealthy and surrounded by love. Every time I walk past the mirror, I see a woman who is strong and confident and beautiful. I see a woman who took control of her life and refused to be a victim. I see a woman who knows her worth and won't settle for anything less. My life is a masterpiece, and I am the artist. I have spent the last few years refining my craft and becoming even better at what I do. I have won several awards for my work, and I am often invited to speak at conferences around the world. I am no longer afraid of the future because I know that I can handle whatever comes my way. I have built a life that is resilient and beautiful, and I am proud of every single brick and beam. The email that once felt like a death sentence now feels like a liberation. It was the catalyst that forced me to see the truth and to make the changes I needed to make. It was the end of a bad chapter and the beginning of a great one. I am grateful for the lessons I learned even though they were hard. They made me the woman I am today, and I wouldn't change a thing. I am Lena Thompson, and I am the master of my own universe. I have built a life that is as strong as the bridges I design, and it will last just as long. I am happy I am free, and I am exactly where I am supposed to be. I often think about the day Mark will be released from prison. He will come out to a world that has moved on without him. He will have no money, no career, and no reputation. He will have to start from scratch, and he will find it very difficult. I don't wish him ill, but I don't wish him well either. I just wish him the life he earned. I hope he realizes one day that he had everything and he threw it away for nothing. I hope he thinks about me every time he sees a bridge or a skyscraper and remembers that the woman he tried to destroy is the one who is keeping the world standing. And as for Sarah, I hope she enjoys her life in the village. I hope she remembers the taste of the expensive wine and the feel of the designer clothes and realizes that they were never hers to begin with. They were stolen goods, and they were taken back by the rightful owner. I am at peace with my past, and I am excited for my future. There are so many more things I want to build, and so many more places I want to see. I am just getting started. My life is a testament to the power of resilience and the importance of self-belief. I am a structural engineer, and I know that the most important structure you will ever build is your own character. Mine is made of steel and reinforced concrete, and it is never going to fall. I look out my window at the London Eye as it turns slowly against the night sky. It is a marvel of engineering, a perfect circle that keeps moving forward, just like me. I have come full circle, and I am back where I belong, only this time I am stronger and wiser and better than ever. The city is full of lights and possibilities, and I am ready for all of them. I am Lena Thompson, and this is my story of revenge and rebirth, and I am the one who gets to write the final word. I remember the smell of the rain on the pavement. Tonight it is fresh and clean, and it feels like a new beginning every single time it falls. I have decorated my flat with art that I love and books that inspire me. There is a sense of calm here that was missing for so many years. I realize now that I was living in a state of constant tension, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Now the shoes have dropped, and I have picked them up and walked away. I have a small balcony where I grow herbs and flowers. It is my little piece of nature in the heart of the city. Sometimes I sit out there with a cup of tea and just listen to the sounds of London. It is a busy, noisy city, but I find it comforting. It is a city that is always building and always changing, just like me. I have learned to appreciate the small things in life, like the perfect cup of coffee or a good conversation with a friend. These are the things that matter the most. Money is important, of course, and I am glad I have it back, but it is not the most important thing. The most important thing is my peace of mind and my self-respect. Those are things that Mark could never take from me, no matter how much he stole. I am proud of the way I handled everything. I didn't sink to his level, and I didn't use violence or illegal means. I used the system, and I used my brain, and I won. It was a clean victory, and that makes it even sweeter. I have a file in my office that contains all the documents from the case. Sometimes I look at it just to remind myself of how far I have come. It is a thick file full of legal jargon and bank statements, but to me, it is a trophy. It is proof that I fought for myself and that I won. I have also kept the hard hat I wore in the desert. It is scratched and faded, but it sits on a shelf in my office as a reminder of the work I did to get back here. It reminds me that I am a worker and a builder, and that there is dignity in that. I don't ever want to forget where I came from or what I had to go through to get where I am today. It is part of my identity now, and it is a part I am proud of. I have a photograph of the bridge I built in the Middle East hanging on the wall. It is a beautiful structure stretching across the valley like a ribbon of steel. It is a reminder that even in the harshest conditions, you can build something that lasts. I am like that bridge. I was tested by the heat and the wind and the isolation, and I stood firm. And now I am back in my home city, stronger than ever. I have a new project starting next week, a sustainable housing development in East London. It is a project that is close to my heart because it is about creating homes for people who need them. It is about building a community and a future. I am looking forward to getting started. I am looking forward to everything. I am Lena Thompson and my life is mine again. The betrayal was deep and the wound was large, but I have healed. I have scars, of course, but they are just reminders of the battles I have won. They don't hurt anymore. They just tell a story of a woman who was pushed to the edge and decided to fly instead of fall. And as I close my eyes tonight and listen to the city breathe, I know that I am safe and I am loved and I am exactly where I need to be. The revenge is complete and the life I have built is spectacular. I am finally home, and this time, I am the one holding the keys and I will never let them go again. I think back to the early days when Mark and I first met, and I realize that the signs were there all along. He was always a little too charming and a little too focused on appearances. I just didn't want to see it back then because I wanted to believe in the fairy tale. But fairy tales are for children, and I am a grown woman who knows that real life is built with hard work and honesty. I am glad I found out the truth, even if it was in the most painful way possible. It allowed me to shed the dead weight and to become the person I was always meant to be. I am no longer living for someone else's dreams. I am living for my own. And that is the greatest gift I could have ever given myself. My journey from the desert to the courtroom to the top of my profession has been long and difficult, but it has been worth it. I am standing tall and I am not going anywhere. My name is Lena Thompson, and I am a structural engineer, a survivor, and a woman who knows exactly how to build a life that lasts. The sun will rise tomorrow over London, and I will be there to greet it, ready to take on whatever the day brings. Because I know that no matter what happens, I have the strength and the skill to handle it. I am the architect of my own life, and I have designed it perfectly. There is nothing more satisfying than knowing that you have taken back your power and used it to create something beautiful. I am at peace, and I am powerful, and I am free. The end of my story is really just the beginning of a much better one. I have a vision for my life that goes far beyond just career success. I want to travel to every continent and experience every culture. I want to learn a new language and take up a new hobby. I want to live life to the fullest because I know how quickly it can be taken away. I am not going to waste another minute on regrets or what-ifs. I am moving forward with my head held high and my heart open. I have learned to trust myself, and that is the most important lesson of all. My intuition told me something was wrong for a long time, but I ignored it. I will never do that again. I will listen to that inner voice and I will trust my gut. It is the best guide I have. I am surrounded by beauty and intelligence and strength, and I am grateful for all of it. My life is full and it is mine. I am Lena Thompson and I am happy. The revenge is done and the healing is complete and the future is waiting. I am ready for it. I am more than ready. I am excited. I have reclaimed my name and my reputation and my fortune. But more than that, I have reclaimed myself. And that is the best revenge of all. The story of Lena Thompson is one of strength and resilience and the power of a woman who knows her worth. I am that woman and I am proud of it. I am standing on solid ground and I am looking at the stars. And I know that I can reach them. I am a builder and I have built a life that is truly extraordinary. And it all started with a cold email in the middle of a desert. Who would have thought that a betrayal could lead to such a beautiful transformation, but it did. And I am the proof. I am Lena Thompson and I am unstoppable. The lights of London are twinkling below me and I feel a deep sense of contentment. I am right where I belong, and I am never going to let anyone tell me otherwise. My life is a masterpiece of my own making, and I am the only one who gets to hold the brush. I am finished with the past and I am embracing the present. The future is a blank canvas and I am ready to start painting. It is going to be a beautiful picture. I know it, because I am the one who is creating it, and I am a very good builder.